We're talking Ji'Ayir Tig Brown, new 49ers safety. Is he the new starting safety for the San Francisco 49ers? They traded up to get him in the third round of the 2023 NFL Draft. Strengths, weaknesses, what can he be? What will he be for the 49ers? Coming up right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. All right, Croc, here we go. We've talked a lot about the 49ers first draft pick, as usually happens on our live stream. And shout out to everybody joining us live all weekend long, talking draft, and everybody listening up on the podcast as well. All the everydayers out there, we appreciate you. And Croc has done a deep dive into the film. I've been looking a lot more at all the 49ers prospects, especially Tig Brown, as he wants to be called, nicknamed for Tigger. That was his favorite cartoon growing up.
Oh.
So he's bouncing around.
Like you get a nickname of a nickname.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like my nickname is Tigger, but then just call me Tig.
Yeah. It's a shortened version. That's too long. Let's go Tig. So Ji'Ayir Tig Brown is the 49ers' newest draft pick. The 49ers traded up from 99 to 87 to get him in the third round. And really interesting nugget here with him, because I saw his buddy Jaquan Brisker, who Croc, both you and I watched a lot of Jaquan Brisker. We liked him for the 49ers last year as an interchangeable safety. And his teammate at Penn State was Tig Brown, interchangeable safety. That's the guy he was interchanging with. And he was congratulated on draft day by his former teammate Jaquan Brisker. And he talked about something even pre-Penn State that I didn't know about. So Tig Brown went to community college before Lackawanna College in Pennsylvania, where he was teammates there with Jaquan Brisker too. So imagine going up against that community college that had two future top 100 safeties on a defense. Pretty amazing there. So those guys were attached at the hip through junior college, then at Penn State, and then now making their own paths in the NFL. Jaquan Brisker drafted by the Chicago Bears in the second round last year. And now Tig Brown is a member of the San Francisco 49ers, going at number 87 overall this year. When he first got to Penn State, it was the COVID year 2020. He appeared in 9 games, but didn't start any games, only had 6 tackles, didn't play a lot in that first year. But then it was a 2-year starter, 2021 and 2022. 2021 alongside Jaquan Brisker. And then after Brisker was gone to the NFL in 2022, 13 games started each season of his last 2 years for Brown. He had 10 total interceptions those 2 years. I mean, just getting his hands on a lot of footballs. 11 pass defense in 2021. 7 passes defensed in 2022. He even added 4.5 sacks last year, Croc. He didn't have any sacks the year before, but 4.5 sacks lining up close to the line of scrimmage. 7 tackles lost. To put into perspective, 4 sacks and tackles for loss that edge rusher Robert Beal, who the 49ers drafted in the 5th round, got at Georgia. So he was all over the place, getting his hands on footballs, making tackles behind the line, making a lot of plays. And watching the tape, Crop, you definitely see Tig Brown making a ton of plays on that Penn State defense.
Yeah, well, and the crazy thing is, with the breakdown that I did, and I think I went over 2 or 3 games or so, and, you kind of just watch it. Even though he didn't have a takeaway or a sack in those few games that I broke down, you still could see like just this high level, high energy ability, right? I mean, just flying all over the field. I'd watch him cover one guy, and then the ball be thrown to somebody else, and he just kind of seamlessly float off of the guy he was covering, and then just go kill a guy that he really had nothing to do with when the play started. And you just see like a guy with that type of motor. It really reminded me a lot of Talanoa Hufanga, who they put themselves in position to make plays. And it's no coincidence that he had 10 interceptions in 2 years, the only 2 years he played at Penn State, because of just how he plays. And that was one thing that I love. So a lot of the talent evaluators on television, obviously the 49ers as well, were really high on him. Some guys had him as their safety 1. I saw a lot of people say they had him as a safety 2. And I could definitely see why when you cut on the film and you see just that type of tenacity. It's hard to overlook.
He was third team All Big Ten both years. He led the team in tackles last year. Not only did he have those interceptions, which led the team with 4 last year, he also had a 70-yard fumble return for a touchdown last year. Yeah. Team MVP and also team captain. So a lot of accolades for Tig Brown last year as the dude, the captain, the team MVP of the Penn State Nittany Lions in the 2022 season. And it's all about
that's tough too. That's tough to do when you're a guy like him who's a junior college transfer. You know, you come in, you know, these guys, they don't know you like that. But then you come in and it's just like, I'm stepping in at a Power 5 school who they are recruiting their butts off as well. You know, like this isn't just the, I don't know, Ball State. And I say that because I know somebody from Ball State, but this isn't just like a normal college. Like this is Penn State. They've been doing a great job. I want to say the head coach Franklin has been recruiting extremely well, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They can't get the quarterback situation right. You know, they had Levis, and I guess it still makes sense that he left. But anyways, defensively, they have a lot of guys that are like ballers. And when watching his film, I see these corners jumping out. There's another safety. I think he was number 3. He's balling. I'm like, gosh, they got guys all over the field that are doing well. And he was the leader of that, coming from a junior college, not a guy that started off as a freshman and kind of worked his way up through the ranks. It's like, man, I came here for 1 year. I balled out. I had 6 interceptions. Now, yeah, I'm team captain. I'm this, I'm that. And follow that up with another 4 interceptions and play extremely well. And obviously well enough to get drafted. And has it been confirmed if he was a gold helmet guy for the 49ers yet?
They talked about his personality. They haven't, I don't know if I've seen that they actually said he was a gold helmet guy or not. So let us know in the comments on YouTube or at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. I haven't heard every single word from the post-draft press conferences yet, and read every word written by the beat writers about these guys yet, just because we were doing so much of our own work around draft time and going live and all those things, partially at the time that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan were speaking. So I haven't heard if he was a gold helmet guy, but he's a gold helmet type, if not.
Definitely.
So interesting. It's all about the tape, and all the analysts, everybody that really likes him. I'm sure the 49ers, it's all about personality. It's all about the tape. It's all about what kind of a leader, what kind of a person you're bringing into the building. That's all really important, because when you look at just the measurables, that's where he might fall short as a prospect. 5'3" and 3/8, 203 pounds at the combine. He only ran a 4.65 at the combine, which is slow for a starting NFL safety. 4.58, a little faster time at his pro day. 35.5-inch vertical at his pro day. 10.4 broad jump, pretty much improved on everything across the board.
And those are good numbers too, by the way. That broad jump, that vertical jump, like those are good. Those are good.
Yeah, those are rock solid. 4.21 in the short shuttle, which is pretty good too. And then 18 bench press reps. So he puts in work, and he didn't like his testing at the combine, which is usually a fast track, but he came back to his pro day and he improved. So I just love seeing that. He's clearly a guy who works, clearly a guy who cares. And that comes out in, his personality comes out in his play as well.
Now, definitely, I'd say there were people kind of getting on me because I didn't give him a great grade. And just when I'm watching film and I watch all of it, and I can really tell you pretty much everything about him, and all the things that I really like about him. And he is definitely my type of football player. I just would hope or wish that he just had a little bit more natural speed for whatever plans I would have. Because when you look at the film, and as versatile as he is, all the areas that they utilize him in, too high, single high, in the box, covering slots, you would ideally like the guys just have a little bit more athleticism. You talked a lot about Jaquan Brisker. Brisker, coming out of Penn State, was a guy 6'1", 200 pounds, ran a 4.49 40, at the combine, 22 reps on the bench press. So, the bench press, I don't care about, but the 40-yard dash, it just gives you a little bit more of that athletic ceiling with just kind of what you can do. And to kind of paint a picture for people, and a lot of times I use myself, who I just naturally was not the fastest person, and maybe I hold that against other people, because I know as well as I played at times, and anybody you talk to, they'll be like, yeah, Croc was a dog, but I knew my limitations, and I knew when guys had a certain type of speed, man, I had to defend them a different way, and it made me very vulnerable in coverage, depending on the type of speed that this person had. And maybe I should have just went and played safety because of my type of speed, right, or the lack thereof. But I just know I would have had trouble at this and this, or I did have trouble at these certain things, and it was really hard for me to overcome because I didn't have that top end speed. So when I see a guy like him, and at the combine, which is pretty much as accurate as it gets, even on that fast track, Well, you ran a 4.65. So in my eyes, you are a 4.65 type guy. And when you're out there in space against some of these guys that are just faster or they run their routes at a high speed, it can just be a little difficult based on what I'm asking you to do. So that's not so much the biggest knock on him. Is just there might just be things I don't do with you, right? And, you know, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Derwin, I keep throwing the names out. Yeah, they're probably two of the best safeties in the league, but there's not one thing that I say I don't want this guy doing that. Like, I don't want Derwin doing, I don't want Minkah doing this. And Talanoa Hufanga is like, well, Hufanga, you do a lot of things well. I would ideally not, like, I don't want to have to put him in this position. And I think, and we'll see how it all plays out, but even with Tig Brown, as well as he does a lot of things, is like, okay, let me make sure that I utilize him to his full strength and don't put him in a position where he's likely going to be a little bit more vulnerable. So because of that, that's when I start talking about, all right, I really like a lot of things. I think it's a high-end safety doing these things. But because I won't ask him a lot to do these other things, I would knock him down a little bit on my board based on that. But that doesn't mean that I don't think he's a terrific football player. And that also doesn't mean that he can't prove me wrong and other people and overcome that, which I still would be right with the ability that I think he has.
More on the specifics of the scouting report, the strengths and weaknesses, what we saw on film from Tig Brown at Penn State, and kind of in the same vein there, Croc, I want to talk about athletes and what the 49ers are targeting in the draft versus what some other teams are targeting in the drafts, because some really interesting relative athletic scores out there from some certain draft classes around the NFL. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel right now during the NBA playoffs. Man, fantastic NBA playoffs so far. Steph throwing up 50 in a Game 7, and now, of course, it's Warriors and Lakers that's going to have all eyes on it over here in the West Coast, and including the members of this podcast, because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. And there's no better place to bet on all the playoff action in the NBA than America's #1 sports book. And man, how fun were those? Was the NFL draft to bet on? I hope you listened to the props I've been telling you about. I was like, go under on the quarterbacks. Not only was it under 4.5, it was under 4. It was only 3 quarterbacks in the first round. Hendon Hooker going much later. I tried to tell everybody about it. Hendon Hooker wasn't going in the first round. He ended up going 3rd round to the Detroit Lions. So much fun to bet on. Baseball every single day. We've got hockey playoffs as well, and there's no better place than FanDuel. And you can get involved at FanDuel.com/lockedon to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Okay. So kind of starting with the weaknesses there and looking at that physical profile, like pretty average size. It's not a detriment. 5'11" and 3/8, 203 pounds, but he's not 6'2", 220 or anything like that. He's, it's pretty average speed. Some of the workout numbers are okay. It's the top end speed is the big weakness, I think, right here. And is it maybe the only weakness in the game of Tig Brown? Because I do see one of the things, and again, this is sort of the thing that brings it back to Talanoa Hufanga, which it's easy to compare those two guys just because every 49ers fan that's listening to this podcast can picture in their mind how Hufanga plays the game and what he looks like how energetic he is, and how quick he is to trigger on plays and how active he is. He seems like he's everywhere. Seems like there's 2 of them on the field sometimes. That's how it is watching Tig Brown, in my opinion. But he also can come in a little out of control, and I saw too many missed tackles on tape. And so it's a minor thing because you don't want to change the way someone plays. And I think you brought this up. You said it's easier to ask a player to tone it down than to ask somebody to bring more and get their energy level up. So it's a good thing, but it does make him miss some plays too. And I think that's something that we've seen hurt Talanoa Hufanga when he's like, oh, I see QB scrambling, I'm going to get him. And all of a sudden it's like, QB stops and Justin Fields is like, oh, cool. Nobody's covering that dude, and I can make that throw. So I'm going backside across the field deep because there's no safety there anymore. So energetic, but it can get him in trouble at times, but you also wouldn't want to take it away because it's one of his strengths.
you talked about Talanoa Hufanga against the Chicago Bears. And what else did Hufanga do in that game? Although he gave a touchdown, he also got an interception. And that's kind of the give and take with some of these guys where maybe they are a little bit more aggressive, but Hufanga is hard to tell him, tone it down. Oh, you missed this tackle. Because there's also some really good tackles with him flying in around the line of scrimmage, taking guys out. And you do see a lot of that with Tig Brown. I mean, there's times sideline to sideline, chasing guys down, tackling them, very aggressive, very physical, but then also coming downhill, maybe a little out of control. Oh, he missed his tackle because maybe he didn't wrap up. I saw another play against the Michigan Wolverines, which is tough. Blake Corum, I think he is a terrific running back, probably one of the more difficult running backs to bring down in space. And he got him out in space. It was one-on-one, and he just gave him a little move, cut back. It might have been Corum. It might have been number 7. It might have been Edwards, I think his name is. All right, but one of the running backs from Michigan, they're both game breaker type backs. And he got out there in the open field, and it was just 7 on 16. And 16 just lost. Like, he just completely whiffed. And it's difficult. That is a very difficult position to be in out there in the open field one-on-one with a running back. I think we saw that with Jimmy Ward against the Detroit Lions and Swift, where it was just Jimmy Ward and Swift, and he just made Jimmy Ward missing. Like, that's just a tough position to be in. But you want to see a guy make that tackle, obviously. There were several other ones where he just kind of comes flying in, and sometimes like, did he close his eyes on the quarterback against for Utah? Utah quarterback scrambling upfield, and he just misses, like just completely whips. He didn't even like touch him. So I would say the missed tackles is something that it can be alarming, but it's tough because there's also some really good tackles, and I don't want him to turn down that just tenacity that he plays with, because I think that's what ultimately gets him in a lot of position to make the plays, whether it's the 10 interceptions in 2 years or the fumble recovery for a touchdown, as you alluded to earlier.
And I do want to talk about the athleticism really quick, because it's not just a 40 time. You don't just see a 4.65 and go, he's slow. And there are times where it does show up. And when I first watched him, I was like, hey, I don't really see him need more speed hardly ever. But thanks to you, I did see that you brought to my attention that run against it was Ohio State, right? The Ohio State running back, and he outran the angle on him. And you see Tig Brown like trying. He's like, oh man, I'm not going to get there. I can't reach this dude. He's going to get the corner on me, and he's going to get the sideline, and he's going to run for a touchdown. And so you do see a lack of top end speed occasionally on tape.
And you had said, wow, I hope that running back is a 4.3 type guy. And I'm like, well, he looked like a big back. I don't know what his 40-yard dash is, but it wasn't like it was one of the small jitterbug type guys. He bursted up the middle, broke to the outside, and it looked like Tig had a good angle on him to be able to get him. And the running back just said, you're not catching me, dude. And just literally just outran him. So those are the things right there where I'm like, well, if he was a 4.52, and that's not blazing, but all right, if he's a 4.52 guy, does he make that tackle? And there were a couple of sideline type plays where, he's trying to get over the top, and boom, the receiver catches it. He's kind of right there. There was another one against Ohio State that was actually incomplete, but he wasn't even close. He ended up being like 5 yards away. And those are the things where I'm trying to visualize, is that a speed issue, or is that, I just didn't have a good jump on it. And that could be the case too, because I can probably put on the film of Jaquan Brisker, and maybe there's some that he wasn't able to get to, right? So I don't want to like really hold it to him, but hold that like just on him. But it just felt like, man, you can kind of create a narrative if you want to that, these happen because he's slower. I don't know if that's the case, but that definitely is what crossed my mind when I saw those plays.
All around, though, a lot more positives than negatives on Tig Brown. I love the way he plays. He makes so many plays. He's energetic. He's smart. He seems to be in the right place and at the right time in most cases. And so to finish this up on Tig Brown, before we talk about just athletic testing in general and different philosophies when drafting players, Croc, using two teams, one in the 49ers specifically, what do you think Tig Brown can be? Like what do you think he is, and what do you think he can be for the 49ers?
I think he's a guy that definitely is going to eventually work his way into a starting lineup. I think a guy that just has that type of just the person that he is, that it sounds like I always bet on those type of guys. So, okay, lacks a little bit on the high-end speed guy, whatever. He's a safety. But when you hear about just obviously the playmaking ability, who he is, being voted team captain after coming in as a junior college transfer, having to work his way up as a junior college transfer, make those type of plays. Hopefully he is a gold helmet type guy because that's how it comes off. All of those things make me believe, okay, this is a guy that's going to get after it at the NFL level. And coming from Penn State, I mean, they're getting coached up over there pretty well. I think he should be ready for this type of opportunity. So I'm excited to see what he does. He feels like eventually a starter, a guy that you're cool with, Tayshaun Gibson walking away because you like what this kid brings, and he'll have his opportunity. Now, the other thing I think about is this is your chance, and you got to kind of make a move year one to where they believe in you, kind of like they did Hufanga, because if not, next year early in the draft, they'll be like, who are the top safeties?
Right. Yeah, because that can happen quick too. That can happen really quick on you. It's like the Texans. You draft a 3rd-round quarterback and Davis Mills, and then all of a sudden it's like, God, but we could use a 1st-round quarterback too. And then all of a sudden, guess what? You're back up forever. And so if you don't win that job, then you don't win that job. Really interesting. And I can't wait to watch him play. I think he's going to be really fun to play. And I have a feeling he's going to be a guy that plays up because of how he's wired. And I think that's something that you're going to hear a lot about a lot of the 49ers draft picks in this class, because they're betting on people. They're betting on play styles more so than they're betting on athletes. We're going to get more into those athletes next. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Shout out to the Everydayers. Got a Winky Wednesday coming up next. We're going to dive into more prospects. We've got Darrell Luter that Croc's been diving into the tape on, and we always lean on our DB expert here, Eric Crocker, when it comes to DBs. And Ronnie Bell, Michigan, I think are the 2 next prospects that we're going to do deep dives on here as members of the San Francisco 49ers. So thanks, everybody, for checking us out. And make sure you check out the Peacock and Williamson Show daily, talking about the entire NFL right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
Peacock, I do want to start this segment by saying, identifying the talent is one thing. Knowing how it's going to play out is a totally different thing that's extremely difficult to predict. So I am never going to be a like this hot take guy and say what a player won't be or will be. That's not my thing. I can say I bet on, Tig Brown's just the person that he is and his playmaking ability that he has shown all the way through that has gotten him to this point. And I'd say, man, it feels like he's going to be a guy that's a safety in the NFL for 8 years, right? Like just an 8+ year safety in the NFL. But I would never say, well, he's not fast, so he's going to be a bust. Or, oh, he's going to be amazing. Like, I'm not going to go either way. He's going to have to decide the type of NFL career that he wants. But right now he's set up, he's made up of all the right stuff, and it feels like he's in a position to be a legit good safety in the NFL.
Yeah, it's really important because we give our scouting reports and our opinion about what a guy is and kind of how it looks like he's going to become and what we envision, what type of player he'll be in the NFL. But you never know exactly. And we're not going to sit here and say that somebody can't be something. I think the best example of it is Aaron Banks, because it was like, I don't know. Doesn't look like he fits at all. And he fit last year, right? And that was a surprise to me. And I think it was probably a surprise to you. But we didn't say that he can't ever be good. We just said that this doesn't look like it's a fit. And if we had to project what he's going to be, I don't know if he's a great fit for the 49ers. He came back, changed his body a little bit, got back to his original left side, and all of a sudden, boom, he's a starter after not even being able to make an appearance with the 49ers for his entire rookie year. And so you're never going to say that a guy can't do that.
Yeah, I always think that's wild when people do that.
Yeah.
Athletes are made to prove people wrong. Like most of them, that's what they've been doing their whole lives. Heck, Tig, I don't know why he was at a junior college, but maybe, I know a lot of people go because of grades when they have that type of ability, but you never know. Maybe everybody just passed on him. Or we don't want this 11 guy that's okay. We don't know exactly, he's not the fastest of guys. He goes to camps. Maybe he's not flashing like some of the other camp guys. So people passed on him. And his whole thing was, I'm going to prove these people wrong. I'm going to go ball out for 2 years at this Lackawanna Junior College or whatever it's called. And then I'm going to go to Penn State, ball out there in 2 years, become team captain, and get drafted 3rd round. Like the guys, they are made to prove people wrong.
Yeah, he's probably already got his chip on his shoulder just from the recruiting process.
Yeah.
He's had that. He's been cultivating that chip for 5 years already.
Yeah.
All right. I want to share this here because it's super interesting. And those of you out there that follow the draft are probably pretty familiar with @MathBomb on Twitter. and the relative athletic score, the RAS, the RAS scores. And I'm going to bring it up on the screen here for those of you watching this on the YouTube channel. And it's something that is fascinating to me because when it comes to athleticism and when it comes to when you watch tape and you say, okay, well, this guy's fast, this guy's not. And when the thing that they do here with the relative athletic score, I love it because it spits out a number and you're able to see. And by the way, you can go to @MathBomb on Twitter and find all the different players and their specific, how they got to this number. And you can see right away that the 49ers didn't have huge athletic scores on their team. And we knew that by watching the tape. We knew that by the testing numbers that we saw, but this kind of just brings it all down into one thing. And on the screen, we can see the entire draft class for the 49ers this year. And they only have 2 real plus athletes as far as testing numbers go. And that was surprisingly the best athlete as far as relative athletic score. It takes into account height, weight, speed, your explosion, the jumps, your speed, your lateral agility. It takes all of it into account versus your position group. So for Darrell Luter, who it turns out is the most athletic as far as testing goes of the San Francisco 49ers draftees, 8.47 out of 10 relative athletic score. And that's in the, it's not quite elite, but it's a really good level of athlete that Darrell Luter is out of South Alabama, 49ers 5th round cornerback versus other cornerbacks. And he was the most athletic player that the 49ers drafted. And we talked about Ji'Ayir Brown not looking like a supreme athlete sometimes on the field, and his testing numbers weren't great. 5.96 relative athletic score, which is pretty mediocre as far as athletes go versus other safeties in the NFL. There's no relative athletic score for kickers, but Cameron Latou, 6.23, kind of mediocre athletic score. Robert Beal, I'm surprised, but he didn't have very good jumps in the explosion numbers, even though he ran 4.4 at just a hair under 6'4" and just a hair under 250 pounds. And I guess for a defensive end, that's a little undersized for a defensive end versus some of these 270 pounders that are 6'5". So I think from a size perspective, he doesn't really stand out. And from some of his athletic testing, even though he ran 4.4s, you would think he'd be an athletic freak and rank high in relative athletic score, but he didn't. It was 7.43, which is good, not great. D. Winters is a short, fast at linebacker, 5.71. I think, height probably has something to do with that. Braden Willis, really bad testing numbers, 4.71 was his relative athletic score, which is pretty poor. Ronnie Bell was the second best of the 49ers, 8.2 relative athletic score. And then Jalen Graham, Purdue linebacker, the final pick, 255 overall for the 49ers, 4.33, which is also poor and the worst relative athletic score of the 49ers draft picks there. Now, this doesn't mean anything about what kind of player they're going to become, but the 49ers clearly didn't target athletes in this class. And we had talked about after day 2, Croc, or after the 3rd round, Croc, day 2, that, the 49ers didn't really draft a lot of traits yet. And they kind of did a little bit more in the 5th round. But even then, it wasn't a traitsy draft for the 49ers. It was a tough guy draft. It was a special teams draft. And I just think that this relative athletic score drives that point home.
Right. The 49ers are definitely looking for certain type of guys. And I think they value that over the athletic traits, which I guess can be good and bad. Now, here's where it works out, right? And this is the part where it's like, well, Croc, can't have it both ways. Nick Bosa, not a great athlete. Josh Allen, the edge rusher out of Kentucky, was a better athlete, but they went with the guy that we just think is a better football player.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they do that more times than not. Deebo Samuel, I think DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, a couple guys from that same class, they were on the board. 49ers could have had any of them. I would assume, and you can look at it, but maybe their relative athletic score, I don't know. DK's might be low because of his poor agility drill.
That would have held him back. He would have been off the charts in the explosions and the height, weight, speed, but not in the agilities.
Right. Who told him to do that? Like, just don't do the drills.
Oh, dude, as soon as he showed up and ran that 40, pack it up and go home.
Right.
Or your 40-inch vertical too, probably.
Right. But, the 49ers have shown to say, you know what, we're not going to rely on athletic traits. Now, my big, gripe with that is they definitely have a lot of good football players, and they've built a well-oiled machine, right? From just top to bottom is a good roster. I feel like one of the better rosters in the NFL. I do think that, especially offensively on the perimeter, they could have guys that just scare you a little more. And I think the way that Kyle has built this offense with the receivers, and you can even add Ronnie Bell to that. I've been watching him. Can't wait to break him down. There's some good stuff. I know I've been down on him. It's not about him. It was more so about some guys that they could have had higher, maybe in the third round. And it's like, well, we want to get Latu instead of getting a more dynamic receiver, et cetera, whatever. But watching Ronnie Brown is very clear. He fits. He's a very Kyle Shanahan type of receiver and kind of fits that mode as well. It's like, who scares you? Now, Debo scares you after the catch. It's like once he catches the ball, it's like, oh, damn, here we go, right? George Kittle, now he can scare you from an athletic standpoint, but a lot
he has a really good relative athletic score.
Right. When I look at like receivers and I have to guard them, right, and I'm looking at that, it's like the 49ers receivers wouldn't scare me. Like I feel like on all of them, you can create separation at the top of routes, but I feel like I'm going to be in position to make a play. And there are some receivers where you line up and you're just like, one bad step and it's over. And the 49ers haven't targeted that type of guy. And clearly the RAS, the relative athletic score, kind of displays that. And it hasn't mattered. Terrific roster. They play extremely well. It's just, who truly pumps fear in your heart when you line up across from this guy? Like, who is Jalen Ramsey? Like, okay, I got to worry about this. I don't think he's worried about anything other than, okay, Debo, if he catches the ball, I got to tackle him.
And this is just shorthand too. It's not like nobody's chasing relative athletic scores because you want to see it on tape and you want to see the player be athletic. But usually when someone's really athletic on tape and they test well, and they're going to have a good relative athletic score. And ideally you have both glass eaters, dudes who are all about it. They're captains, they're leaders, they're high energy, right? And they have a high character. They're exactly wired the way you want. And they have tons of elite athleticism. You hope you get both of those together. And that's what made George Kittle so special, because he did have both. It wasn't used as a pass catcher much. It was kind of hidden in college. So maybe Darrell Luter, because he went to a smaller school, is that guy, that hidden gem. And again, maybe he's the guy that the 49ers hit on in the 5th round. Robert Beal maybe is that guy. I like seeing his get off, even though he doesn't have a great vertical, which is usually one of those explosive metrics that shows that. He actually still shows that, even though he didn't have a great vertical jump for whatever reason. Obviously has a lot of speed and a lot of length, and so a lot to work with some of these players. But for the most part, the 49ers did not lean toward elite athletes in the 2023 draft. And I do want to bring up the relative athletic scores just to kind of show you what it looks like for some other teams, and the team that leaned the most heavily toward athletic traits. And it's pretty wild to see the relative athletic scores for the Indianapolis Colts from this draft class. And partly I bring up the Colts because I liked their draft class, but man, when you see what their testing numbers look like, it was pretty wild. And it starts off with a 10 out of 10 athletic score versus other quarterbacks in the history of the world. And that is Anthony Richardson. But this is crazy, Croc. All elite athletes. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see all of these testing numbers for the Colts, all in green. They're swinging for the fences. They're trying to hit home runs with these draft picks. And I really like a lot of the picks they made. And some of them, Darius Rush is on here, right? He had great testing numbers. I don't think you liked him on tape, right?
Right. I thought he was a little clunky with his movement skills.
Went in that 5th round area, right around where Darrell Luter was drafted. And I think from what I've seen from Darrell Luter, I like Darrell Luter better than Darius Rush. Darius Rush has a better relative athletic score, though. But here's what's crazy, Croc. The worst athlete that the Colts drafted as it pertains to relative athletic score was their 6th round defensive end, Titus Leo, who I've never seen, out of Wagner College. And I don't know if I've even seen Wagner play football ever. With the 211th pick, he had an 8.48 relative athletic score. That was the worst relative athletic score in the entire draft class. They drafted a lot of dudes here, the Colts did. And that is still a better relative athletic score than the best athletic score by .01, 8.47 versus 8.48 of the 49ers' best athlete in their class. So
do you think that they're aware of that? Do you think they're aware of, when they go into it? Because the relative athletic score, I mean, they might have – some of these teams are using an outside source.
I'm sure teams have their own, whether it's just this exact thing or something very close to it. These teams all have analytic departments, and they have some kind of an athletic score. They have to.
Yeah. because it does not feel random when you see this. I mean, you guys listen to the audio right now. You can't see it, but it's lit up in green. The 49ers had some red, some yellow. You saw 2 green. You know, it was like, okay, you know, whatever. There has to be, how many guys did they draft? 11 guys, 12 guys?
Yeah, they had a dozen draft picks, the Colts did. All of them green, all of them elite athletes. The worst athlete from a relative athletic score was better than the best athlete from a relative athletic score perspective that the 49ers drafted. It's just pretty wild.
Yeah,
and a lot of good players I like Blake Freeland.
I was just about to mention that. A lot of people like Blake Freeland. You see him. Josh Downs, the receiver out of North Carolina. There were some people that speculated maybe he would be a first-round pick. I didn't think first round, but for them to get him in the third round, it's like, that's a good deal. Like if you, and again, you got to see how he fits, right? They're pairing him with Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman. I think he complements those guys extremely well, being able to work in that slot.
They needed a Josh Downs. And look, he's still got an 8.99 athletic score, even though he's really small. So, you know, that part of his score is really low. So that's how athletic he is to make up for it and still have an elite score. Blake Freeland, Atomiwa Adebawore was somehow there in the 4th round still. They swooped him up as well, along with Freeland in that class. Daniel Scott this is what I love about it too. I know you liked Will Mallory, really athletic tight end. I think he had the fastest 40 time of all the tight ends at the combine. But the 2 picks before that in the 5th round, Darius Rush and Daniel Scott, both tested really well. We didn't like their tape.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Now, Will Mallory, that's the one where it's like, you know, I saw, you know, you draft Latu, and it's like, dang, like there's just more upside with him. But again, these things, we're looking at these scores right now, y'all. This does not mean that they will be better than the 49ers players.
Exactly.
It just means that Eric Crocker thinks they got good value.
Yeah.
I think it's good value. I didn't like Scott the way that people were talking about him. Like, how were they talking about Scott? You know, it was first round, like 2nd round type safety. And I'm like, this ain't no 2nd round safety. But you get him in the 4th round or 5th round, like then, oh, okay, yeah, like I like that. I just didn't think he was a 1st round or 2nd round safety.
Right. Yeah. Well, he was getting projected to the 49ers in that round 3 area. It's like, nope, let's talk day 3, round 4, round 5, round 6, round 7, something like that. I would like Daniel Scott. And because of that testing, he went in round 5.
And that feels right.
Better spot. And Darius Rush too. Same thing. He was getting mocked to the Niners in the 3rd. He went in the 5th, but that's what the tape, that's the story the tape told. I think we'd have both liked those guys a lot better in the 5th.
And Mallory, right? Like Mallory was getting mocked in that range, but it was like, it feel like more of a 4th, 5th round pick. So I think that part too, where if you hear kind of some excitement in my voice, is because I am really big on value. I heard somebody say, if another podcaster says value, I'm gonna pistol whip them, right? I saw that on Twitter. But my thing is like, man, I think it's a real thing. And if you look at how they're drafted, they got good value. Doesn't mean that they're gonna be good, but if they whiff on these guys, at least it's like, well, he had the athletic traits. It didn't quite work out, but we're going to take enough swings at these high-level athletic guys to where, hey, can we get 5 of these 12 guys to be able to like play and start for us? And if anybody has drafted well, they definitely the Colts. They've done a good job. They just haven't had the quarterback. They've been trying to piece together the quarterback position with Carson Wentz. Then that where you had the Phillip Rivers experience. He was kind of old. They did go to the playoffs though, and then you had the Matt Ryan. It's like, it's time for this guy to retire. And then they benched him and had to play Sam Ehlinger. So like they just have had a tough time with the quarterback position. But outside of that, they've built a pretty good team.
Well, they put together some athletes. They need to supplement. I think they've been a little too draft and develop there. They did have some lean years in the draft. They had the big Darius Leonard and Quentin Nelson draft. Then they had a couple of drafts that didn't bring a lot of value. And then I liked their draft last year. And then this year, I liked a lot of their picks. And obviously, they got a ton of athletes in there. They got a new coach and a new quarterback. So that's what's really going to tell the story about what the Colts end up being. And again, just because you have a great relative athletic score or you're super fast or super tall doesn't mean you're going to be a great football player. I just thought it was such a stark difference in just the pure athletes that the 49ers brought in versus what the Colts brought in this draft class. And the 49ers clearly leaned heavily one way, and the Colts leaned heavily the other way.
Colts also drafted Nick Scott, and I'm pretty sure his relative athletic score is probably high. Nick Scott, excuse me. Nick
Cross last year.
Cross.
Well, this is the second year because everyone's like, hey, Ballard loves those traits because last year they went Pierce, crazy athletic score, Bernard Raymond, who's kind of going to battle with Freeland, I think, for that offensive tackle. He was a similar guy, sort of a raw, really toolsy, athletic offensive lineman. Nick Cross, off the charts, relative athletic score as well. So they drafted 4 or 5 of those guys last year, too, that would definitely be in the elite category of athletes. All right, fun stuff. Very interesting. The NFL draft, and of course, we won't really know the answers for a couple of years with all of these prospects, but we're still breaking them all down. Next will be Ronnie Bell, right, Croc? And maybe Terrell Luter. Those will be the 2 next prospects that the 49ers drafted in 2023 that we will deep dive into. So stay tuned to Locked On 49ers.